Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space and holiday cards. I had to be reminded by people in my live chat yesterday that it was the 25th yesterday, and I made a commitment to do Christmas cards on or around the 25th of each month. This month has been chaotic, and I completely forgot. But I was working last night and then this morning, and I got these cards done to share with you guys to add to my stash. So for those that aren't aware, on or around the 25th of each month, I gave myself that caveat at the beginning. I want to post a new holiday card series video using random holiday and maybe even non-holiday themed products to build up my own stash so that I'm not feeling so overwhelmed when it gets, to crunch time in the fall. Because I love making holiday cards, but I make a lot, I send out a lot, and this helps. I've never been able to keep up with it any other year. Because usually I'm just kind of done. But so far this has been nice, even though I forgot this month. It's kind of nice to just make some holiday cards. So thankfully I already had products pulled out for an upcoming holiday video. So I just grabbed them, got to work. As always, everything I used will be listed and linked in the description box below the video. My links are affiliate links. That just means that if you click on one of my links, end up placing an order, I get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you. That is what helps pay the bills, keeps the lights on, enables me to keep bringing out content. And then at the very end of this video, in the end screen, I'll post the link to my 2025 holiday card series playlist that has a few videos already in it. And then I'll just keep adding to it, as we do this throughout the year. And I hope y'all enjoy, and let's get right into making these cards. So I'm using Simon Says Stamp's tall Poinsettia wafer die. I did a video using this die when it was released last year. And like I said, I had kind of a little stack of products pulled out to use it again because I love it. I love it. I love poinsettia wafer dies. I love poinsettia embossing folders, which I also used an embossing folder on today's cards. Stamps. I just love poinsettias. They're gorgeous. They're so gorgeous. So I die cut watercolor paper with this wafer die set. And then I'm sticking the die cut pieces to this stamp and stencil mat. This mat has a very low tack adhesive on it. And one of my favorite ways to use it is to hold die cut pieces just like this so that I can watercolor them. Because this has an actual adhesive, it holds a bit better than my grip mats, which I like to use the photopolymer grip mats more for holding stencils in place and if I'm ink blending on die cuts. That's what I prefer that for. Whereas for this, I really like this to hold with watercolor. It doesn't hold perfectly because I, get heavy-handed with the water, but it's great. It stains. As you can see, my mat is very stained. When I'm done, as soon as I was done with this and the pieces were dry, I just took them off the mat and then I rinsed this mat under the sink, just under cool water, and then let it air dry. I don't scrub it. I don't use soap, anything like that, because I don't want to remove that adhesive. And the staining is just whatever. I don't care about that. But yeah, I just let it air dry and then literally rinse and reuse over and over again. So I'm using Simon's Positively Saturated inks, and I smushed them onto my little plastic palette. And then I paint the die cut pieces with just clean water first. And adding the water first helps move the inks more, because if I was just painting the inks on without any water being there first, they kind of will just sit in place, if that makes sense. So by putting the water onto the die cut before swirling my brush into the inks and applying that, it just gives everything more blendability. And then once I've got the water there, I put on the inks. And for the greenery, I used Field, Kale, and Raindrop inks, and I'll have the specific colors listed in the supplies. And just slap that color on. I say that a lot, but it's true. Look what I'm doing. That's all I'm doing. and letting them blend, letting them do their thing. And yeah, I love it. I really, I love watercoloring on die cuts this way, whether it's with inks, doing it with watercolors, any water reactive ink will work. Also, any watercolor will work, anything. It's just fun. I like doing it, especially dyes like this where it's got piercing detail, because the color will kind of soak into the pierced areas as well. And I also love it because it's a little freeing because I'm not having to worry about like stamp lines or anything like that. And I also like it because when I'm doing multiples, which I did 2 cards today, they look different. You know, no matter what you do, they're not going to, each piece is not going to be exactly the same because, you know, there might be more ink, there might be more of this color, that color, whatever. And it's just fun. So after the greenery, I'm doing the petals of the poinsettia, and that's where I used Apple, Cranberry, and Cabernet inks. And I'm doing kind of the same thing. Painting the die cut piece with water first, and then the lightest shade is Apple, so I put that more towards like the ends of the petals, like the tips of the petals. The Cranberry ink is the medium shade. That I put from the center out. And then that Cabernet shade, which is the darkest, I drop that in right towards just the very base of these petals, and it just gives it that extra bit of depth. And again, rinse and repeat. Just keep going through and adding the color to these die cuts. And I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it. If watercoloring things, you know, is something that intimidates you, but you want to try it, I highly recommend die cutting some pieces and trying that. It's fun and it's freeing. And again, you don't need to worry about like staying in the lines or, you know, doing a big background that can be, you know, overwhelming for some. Just some little die cuts, you know, especially florals. Florals I find are very forgiving and can be quite fun. And then there's so many things you can do with die cuts, you know, whether you watercolor them or ink blend them or die cut them from solid cardstock. Like, you can use them in a million ways. And I enjoy it. For me, this is like kind of therapeutic in a sense, just adding all this color. And then when you put them together, you know, build up and build the finished image. It's just fun. So I worked my way around till I had all of these covered. And then, like I said, I popped all the pieces off. I rinsed off my mat, and I did the same thing with my palette. Just rinse it under water, cleaned everything off, let everything air dry. And then my stamp and stencil mat is good to use. Who knows how many more times. I've been using that same stamp and stencil mat now for, goodness, well over a year now, maybe a couple years. I've been using it for a long time, and still sticky, still doing its thing. So after I cleaned everything off and all the pieces were dry, I'm now going to edit this die set because it's technically, you know, the one stem and then the large petal layer and the small petal layer. And I die cut everything in double because the one stem, as you can see, I trimmed the leaves off, and then I'm going to adhere it to the other one just to fill it out, just for funsies. It's just going to give it a bit of a different look. It's another thing that I'm doing more and more of is trying to branch out a little bit more. No pun intended, as I'm working on a branch. Branch out a little bit more and like edit my die cuts. I can get very specific. It's like, this is the way it was meant to be, you know, the way it was die cut, the way it's supposed to look. And that's fine too, especially the first time you put any sort of die set together. You know, put it the way it was supposed to be and then play with it. You know, die cut some extra pieces, cut them apart, snip things off that you don't want, whatever. So with that, I trimmed off the leaves of the one, adhered it to the second stem, and then with the petal pieces, I just doubled the layers to make it much more full. So it just gave it a slightly different look. And I did the exact same thing with the second one. And then once those were adhered together, for my backgrounds, I'm using the Poinsettia Jubilee embossing folder. This one I'm not sure if I used at all last year. I'm sure I probably did. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. So I'm running that through with some of Simon's smooth white cardstock. And off camera, I take the cardstock panel and I lightly mist just one side of it with water. That just softens the paper fibers a little bit so that this embosses better and minimizes any chance of cracking. And then I run this through my Empress die cut machine with one cutting plate. And I get just this gorgeous pattern. Like just that alone is fabulous. So I did that. And then I'm using, the one new product I'm using is the Petal tipped labels, which I've already used in so many videos. I'm obsessed with this die set. I love it. I love this shape. So I die cut some black cardstock with one of the Petal tip labels wafer dies. And then for the sentiments, I'm using the Big Holiday Words stamp set. This is a definite favorite. And I'm going to white heat emboss the Noel word on these black cardstock pieces. So I used my anti-static powder tool on the cardstock. That helps prevent the embossing powder from clinging to anything other than the stamped sentiment. And I'd line that up in my Misty, and I stamped the sentiment with clear embossing ink. And then I'm coating it with Simon's Detail White embossing powder, and then repeating on the second die cut here. So inking it up with clear embossing ink, stamping it twice just to make sure everything's stamped, and then coating it with the Detail White embossing powder, tapping off the excess, and then I'll heat these with my heat tool till everything is smooth and melted. And then once that's done and it's cooled off, which only takes a few seconds, I'm going to use my little microfiber cloth and a little bit of elbow grease to buff away that excess anti-static powder, because it obviously does not look pretty on dark cardstock. So buff that off. And even sometimes like with this, because this cardstock is so black and the anti-static powder just wanted to be finicky today, I also use even like the base of my hand, like the palm of my hand, to help kind of buff away that excess powder, and then it's good to go. And then those backgrounds that I had embossed off camera, I trimmed them down a little bit. I trimmed them down to like 4 by 5 1/4. And then I'm adhering them to black note cards that are A2 size. So 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And these are top folding black note cards. So I adhered the background, and then I adhered the black die cut piece. And everything I'm just using craft tacky glue with. I didn't use any foam adhesive this time. If you wanted to, you could like build up the dimension, put like thin foam squares between the layers of the floral, things like that, and really build up the dimension. But this one has enough texture and dimension. I just didn't feel the need, but you totally could, every layer could be popped up with foam tape and it would look amazing. But I just glued everything down with craft tacky glue, and then I just put my big acrylic blocks on top, just hold everything down, let the glue dry. And then of course we're going to add splatter, because that's what I like to do. So I'm going to put the cards into my splat box. I'm going to use the stamp to mask off the sentiment. I wish I could remember who I got that idea from, because I want to give them credit, and I cannot remember who I saw doing this originally, but someone else did. So I don't take credit for this. Another option is to use the coordinating wafer die, because that's usually what I would do, is use the coordinating wafer die and just die cut a scrap and use that to mask off the sentiment. But if you don't have the coordinating wafer die, or just whatever, I just set the stamp on top of the sentiment and it just masks it off, and that way I won't get splatter on top of it. Sometimes I don't care, but depending on what I'm doing, and especially with this, with it being very obviously like crisp white on black, I didn't want to get the white or the black splatter over the sentiment. So once the sentiment was masked off, I used white gouache first, put it on my palette, watered it down a little bit, and then used my fan brush to splatter it. And then I'm using some black gouache, same thing, put it on my palette, water it down a little bit, mix it up, and then I'll splatter that with my fan brush. And then as soon as I'm done with that, clean everything up, because especially that black gouache, the black gouache is so staining. Like, it will stain everything. You can see my palette, it's super stained. Totally fine with it, love it. So splattered both of these card fronts with that gouache, and then once I was done, I just took that stamp and cleaned it off. Just a little bit of photopolymer cleaner, like stamp cleaner, and a cloth, and wipes right off. No worries with that. So I cleaned it off and I put it back in the packaging so I didn't lose it, because that happens a lot. So I set those aside, and then I've got a couple panels of white cardstock that's also cut to about 4 by 5 1/4 inches, because these are going to go on the inside of the card because the card base is black. So on these, I'm stamping more sentiments from that Big Holiday Words stamp set. So I stamped the first part of the sentiment with the cranberry ink, and then I took another like sub-sentiment from the set and line that up. And that I'm going to stamp with the VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. And that's just going to finish off the insides of these cards. So inked it up, stamped it, repeated it on the second panel. Once I've got these stamped, I can then adhere this to the insides of both these cards with my craft tacky glue. And yeah, like almost black white. I thought about adding gold splatter to these. That would have looked nice too. And then I could use like little gold embellishments instead of what I'm going to use. That would have been a nice touch. But yeah, I kind of like just keeping everything very black and white, and then that poinsettia, like the red and the green, just really pop on the rest of the card. So inserted those little panels onto the insides of the cards. And then to finish everything off and to add like centers to these flowers, I'm using Simon's Opal Positively Dazzling gems, which, like I always say, like on camera, they don't really look like a whole lot. But then when you tilt them in the light, you can see like the reflection, and they're just pretty. So I did a little cluster of the smallest ones for the flower centers, and then arranged a few more onto these card fronts. And then once I was kind of happy with where everything was, I just pick them up with my little embellishment wand, and then just put down little dabs of craft tacky glue, and then press them into place. And that's it. So I got, just a little bit of shine. I had also thought, I did think about adding like shimmery splatter as well, but these were good, just the way they were. More is more, it just depends on my mood, on, where I decide to stop. But I was happy with these. So once I got all the little dazzling gems adhered into place, I just got to let the glue dry, and these cards are complete. So even though I didn't use any like foam tape or anything, there's so much like texture, and dimension going on between the embossed background and the die cut pieces of the poinsettia, the bling, the splatter. These were fun. And I managed to get a holiday card in for this month. So pat on my back. I did good. And then I can now switch back to doing all the other card ideas that have been like, just swirling in my head. So stay tuned. Like I promised in the live, I'm hoping to spam you all with a ton of card making videos. So stay tuned. And thanks so very much for watching. I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye. Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters. For anyone that might be interested in joining my Patreon community and supporting me, the link to my Patreon is in the description box below the video. For everyone else, as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't, I'd love to have you. And here's a couple other videos for you to check out in case you missed them. Bye!